Good evening. Welcome to this month's Town Administrator Report. I'm David Watts Jr., and with me is our Town Administrator, Steve Maio. Steve, welcome.
Thank you, David. How are you?
Doing well. How are you?
Excellent. Excellent. A little nip in the air out there. We're into the fall season.
We're starting to feel
Yeah.
fall. Yes, and it seemed to come on suddenly a week ago.
Yes, it did. And
You know?
these last couple mornings have been nippy getting up, but that's okay. And with the fall cool air comes our fall town meeting.
Yep, and that's what we're going to be talking about today, which is coming up on Saturday, November 16th, 8 a.m. at the Veterans Memorial Auditorium at the Galvin Middle School. And should we have overflow, we'll have the cafeteria available.
We'll have it ready.
Yep. But, you know, on the one hand, the nice thing is looking at the warrant, we only have 8 articles. But that's a little bit deceiving, and we'll get into that. But let's go through
One may take a little longer than the others.
and we'll get to that one. But let's go through the other articles
Sure.
just quickly, just to let people know what we're going to be discussing and voting on the 16th.
Yeah,
of
I would say that the first two at least are going to be very familiar to town meeting veterans.
Oh yes.
Article
Yes.
1 being the report of fiscal year 24, which is really one of the requirements that we do need to do per the
Right.
charter, is to give
Right.
a report on how we did the previous fiscal year.
Well, and this is the only opportunity really to do it, because the fiscal year isn't done when we do.
When we do
Annual
the spring,
town.
annual town meeting, yeah.
So, people can really get a handle on what the financial health of the town is.
And how we did last year.
Yep,
And
absolutely.
the health is pretty good. We did maintain our AAA bond rating, and that was really based on the end of fiscal year 24 budget. And for those at home, our fiscal year ends on June 30th.
Yep.
So hence our late April or early May town meeting, we don't have all the numbers in yet to talk about this. So the town will be regaled with my pithy report every year. And there will be, it really shows how all the departments did.
Sure.
What came in,
Sure.
what came out. So it is a good opportunity, and the first draft of the report is done. Here we're filming this on, what is today, the 18th or
16th.
16th. Today being the 16th, a month before
Yep.
town
Exactly a
meeting,
month.
and we will have that on our website, I would say within a couple of weeks or so.
Okay.
And then people can look at it before town meeting and, of course, ask any questions that they want.
Sure.
And that is, actually, that is the town administrator's article, which you're not used to seeing. That's the only one that we have. So that should be, I think, without fanfare, I hope.
Well, and I think Article 2 will be pretty much without fanfare, because
Well,
that's an annual article
It is an
as
annual
well.
town meeting. We will talk about this with some of the nuances of as how, what we're doing is we're using some of our savings account to balance our budget, savings account being our free cash,
Right.
or our checking account to balance our budget.
Right.
And, we really go through a lot of forecasting with the Finance Committee and the Town Council. We are very conservative on our revenues coming in,
Mm-hmm.
just in case they don't come in.
Right.
We pretty much know what taxes are going to be. Real estate taxes, we don't know how much we're going to get from excise tax or local option meals tax. That's not set. That's nebulous. As cars come in, cars come out, people go to restaurants, they don't.
Right. Well, it
Um,
depends on how much activity there is over the course
Depends
of
on
the
the
year.
economy, yeah.
Yeah.
And actually, state aid can be cut during the year. It's happened before.
Yeah.
So we are conservative, so we use our free cash, which right now is at about 11.6 million, and we'll use a portion of that to balance the budget, or allow the assessors to use that to balance the budget, and the remainder will stay in our account.
Yep.
And keeps us solvent in case of a rainy day.
And then Article 3.
Article 3 is a new one. It is a capital article, so the town is not, it's not unfamiliar to have a capital article come
Right.
at the fall town meeting. And this is really very exciting to put solar panels on top of the Galvin roof, which was built solar ready, which means that it has conduits on the
Right.
roof that, I haven't put a snake down them, but I assume and we are verifying that as we go along, that they go to the electrical room, okay? And we're going to put solar panels on the roof. We've actually already gone out to bid and gotten a couple of bids for that. And what is really interesting about this right now is that the federal government, through the Inflation Reduction Act, it will give you a credit of up to 30% on your taxes if you use solar energy and electrify your home on it. Now, you might say, well, the town doesn't pay taxes. No, we don't. However, under this act, we can still receive up to 30% of credits for the federal government to cover the cost of this. So if the cost of this is, I'm using very round numbers, $900,000, we could get about $300,000 of this back from the federal government with some other items that we will do to reduce this amount of our cost. We're going to reduce what our cost as a town is to electrify the roof, and we could see a return our investment, meaning that the savings of paying for, gas for the or electricity, I should say, electricity for it, through the light department, we'll probably see a payback on this of 4 or 5 years. So
which is actually very good.
Amazingly good, and a big part of that is the credit we're going to get back from the federal government. So it's an exciting article.
Well, and also this is yet the next phase after we were talking not too long ago about the solarization of the MGLD building on North Avenue.
The MGLD building, a couple of our DPW,
the high school, the vocational school.
Yeah, so really are taking advantage of this. I'm not going to say free energy because there are costs involved in everything, but a freer energy.
Right.
Anyway.
And cleaner.
So it's a great program.
It's a win-win all the way around.
Yeah.
We're going to skip Article 4 for now. Article 5 is to vote to implement collective bargaining agreements between the town and Wakefield Clerical Town Hall.
As I said in the spring, this was on in the spring. We didn't get the contract done.
Yep.
I'm happy to say the contract is done now. I would say a reasonable contract is one that neither side got everything they wanted. So this is the case here. Neither side got everything they wanted in this contract, but I think it's reasonable, consistent with our other contracts on the town side. And this will again bring all unions under the town. All the contracts are in season. So I'm very happy about that.
So we have no more negotiations going on.
Well, no, there's always negotiations for the next ones that are running out. But right now, we'll take like 2 months off.
Yeah. Catch your breath.
Catch my breath until January. We'll start again.
Article 6 is to raise and appropriate funds to supplement the water and sewer budget. This is another annual.
Well, it is annual. And what's interesting about this budget is that, water and sewer account, the water and sewer departments are paid for really by, the rate on water, the rate on water and sewer, but it's tied to the water. It's tied to how much water people use, really. And with all of the conservation going on, and I think I thought it was a fairly dry summer, but I guess it wasn't as dry as it could have been. People are not using as much water as they used to.
Right.
People are conserving and maybe using different methods to help their gardens grow and what have you. So we're really not using enough water to fund the department. So we're going to take some money out of our retained earnings, or request that we take money out of retained earnings, and water and sewer self-sustaining accounts to cover those there. So that's kind of an interesting dynamic on that one.
But it shows people are trying to conserve.
People are trying to conserve, right? And I will, full disclosure, part of it's my fault. I finally figured out where the leak was in the family pool. And once that got, it made all the difference in the world.
See, it's all your fault.
And it was all my fault years ago, yes.
Okay. Article 7, building inspector reports. This is a citizen petition.
Citizen petition. Under our charter, if you have 10 citizens agree with you, and 10 is not a huge number.
Right.
You can put a warrant on either the annual or the regular town meeting. Annual spring, regular being the one in November. A special town meeting it requires more signatures because that is called for a specific purpose. And this is a citizen petition who wants the building inspector to, in his annual report that goes into the annual report,
Yep.
talk about buildings that were larger that were built in town during that year. A list of new major buildings that were inspected during the year. I think that this will be some interesting discussion. I think that the annual reports, or the monthly reports certainly cover that, in my opinion.
Yeah.
But we'll have to hear what people say.
Yeah. Yeah, it is interesting there. By the way, to show how low a bar for a citizen petition is, and correct me if I'm wrong, Wakefield has currently somewhere north of 16,000 voters,
Well, actually, north of 18.
18,000 voters.
And you only need a 10.
And you only need 10.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
And then finally, Article 8 is another citizen
petition.
petition, which, so I don't get into the wordiness of it, is basically an Israeli injunction by the town.
Yeah, by the petitioner, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
think that's a good way to look at it. Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's it. There's 8. We didn't talk about the Big Kahuna yet, but
Nope.
8 is not I'd say it's an average number for a fall town meeting. Fall town
Yeah.
meeting is usually, maybe there's a couple of cleanup things, but really there's not a lot that goes
Yeah.
on in the fall,
No.
other than, balancing. budget.
Usually it's stuff that has come up that just needs to
Right.
be cleaned up before annual town meeting the following year.
Right.
Sometimes we get the fire and police indemnification.
Right.
Sometimes we get, other things that have come up. But no, this one should be manageable. But
But
Article 4 may be, as you call it, the big kahuna, which brings everything to a crawl. We'll have to see, because it did at annual town meeting.
Right.
And that's the infamous 40A MBTA Communities Overlay District.
yes, and I actually have a little PowerPoint here. We can talk a little bit about that, if that's okay.
Yep.
So the community may recall that in the spring, we actually did put forward a MBTA Communities Overlay District bylaw for the town, and that was voted down. The town council decided that it was their responsibility to make sure that we put forward a compliant proposal to town meeting again,
Mm-hmm.
because although the town meeting voted on voted on those proposals, the law was still out there, and we still have to comply according to the state by December 31st, 2024. And I think that that some may look at it as bad faith if we didn't put forward something.
Well, and just to kind of frame why the town needs to talk about it now, what's the state penalty if this is not decided one way or the other
Right.
by December 31st?
Well, at the minimum, there are certain grants that we will not be eligible for to receive. And I'll go through that a little bit in the
Okay.
PowerPoint here today.
Okay.
However, the community of Milton, which is not in compliance, and they had to be in compliance December 31st of 2023.
Mm-hmm.
So they are not in compliance.
Mm-hmm.
They are actually being sued by the Attorney General's office of the state of Massachusetts as well. So we don't know what the penalty could be on that.
But
as
also
well.
on the other side of things, Rockport and a few other communities have filed suit against the state
Right.
over 40A,
Yeah.
and that case is still pending.
Those cases are still pending.
Yep.
But I think the case of first impression, which was argued at the SJC just the beginning of October, we probably won't know till town meeting.
Right.
So, but anyways, so what we did is we took a look at this and what we needed to do to comply. And the town council created a 3-member committee made up of Chairman Mike McLean, Vice Chair Ed Dombrowski, and Town Councilor Robert Vincent.
Mm-hmm.
And they really listened to the public, had a number of public meetings, and we also did a survey, and do a survey in the middle of the summer in the July timeframe to get 852 responses is incredible. And we
Right.
did get those responses, and we held public forums in July and September. And I think, really to the credit of the committee, which was ably shepherded by our new senior planner, Samantha Elliott, we gained a lot of guidance, and we came up with a new map, new locations. Is off-site desired, and under the existing law, 25% of the area can be outside of the 2 train stations. The law requires that 75% of the units be within half a mile of the train stations in town. Actually, there are 3 train stations, one at Melrose Highlands, one in Greenwood, and one on North Ave that intersect with Wakefield. And it was determined that the Melrose Highlands one, although came into Wakefield in a half-mile radius, was a little bit too much in a really true residential area. So,
Well, and plus it's in another community. That
well, we
sounds
would
like a bridge.
well, we would just
too
have
far.
it would work under the statute, but we would just
Yeah.
do the Wakefield side.
Okay.
So we also thought about different character areas, and meaning that different areas could be different. The area on Foundry Street, which we'll talk about in a while, is very different from the area maybe on Main Street in Greenwood.
Mhm.
So as we're going to go through, we're going to see how these character areas developed. So what does compliance look like? We decided that we'd look at character areas, and I'll get into them in a second. We looked at height and density in those areas, but we did have to meet some statutory minimums that the state required, and that was 36 acres. So the area had to be 36 acres. It had to have the capacity or the potential to allow for the building of 1,696 units without going through a special permit process, meaning that they be built by a matter of right. Now, there could be a cursory site plan review, meaning that there's a little look at by the Board of Appeals, for how the site works and what have you, but not the grand hearings that you're going to have, in other projects. It has to have a minimum density of 15 units per acre, and 75% of the district, or 27 acres, or 1,272 units, have to be in-station areas, and up to 25% could be off-site. So,
Now that's interesting because the plan that was shown at annual town meeting, the area around contiguous to the stations wasn't even on the map to any great degree.
the areas around the stations was 100% at
Okay.
town meeting. Before, we opted, or the committee opted in this case, to do 25% off-site.
Yeah.
So, but they also thought about how do you keep the character of areas.
Yeah.
So we kind of looked at this and created 4 character areas, which would be an overlay over the existing area. So Foundry Street, I think we're all very familiar with the Foundry Street area. That's where there are a number of loft-style apartment buildings. So we're calling this the industrial loft character area.
Mm-hmm.
Audubon Road, the area at Audubon Road, which is that 25%, which is outside
Mm-hmm.
of the train station. Colonial Point is
Mhm.
really the area we looked at. That's a high-rise,
Mm-hmm.
so that's a high-rise residential character area, and that's what Colonial Point is, a high-rise residential building.
Mm-hmm.
Albion Greenwood, Albion Street between Main and North Ave, and Greenwood Main Street, kind of between Forester and the Greenwood Plaza, that area on both sides. That's more of a commercial character area with a lot of mixed use. Housing mixed in, but mixed use. And North Ave, from kind of the Galvin School all the way to Church Street,
Mm-hmm.
on both sides, because there's a little bit that we capture on the train where the train station is. Mandatory mixed use, so there has to be a commercial component to that area. And when you think of Albion Street in that area, when you think of North Ave in that area, a lot of that has commercial on the first floor, and we didn't want to lose our commercial tax base. So those are the 4 character areas that we came up with. And a lot of that was not only worked on by the committee, by our fellow citizens, but by the committee as well. So we looked at those areas. What does it mean? We wanted to regulate new projects to a certain extent, and we wanted to make sure the development was consistent with the existing character in that area. Great picture of Main Street there when Fisher Jewelry and J.J. Newberry was there. Although that's not part of the district, kind of shows you what a character area would be. And
Right.
that was the character of the downtown back when you were young and I was younger.
That's how I remember the downtown, and with J.J. Newberry
Yeah.
and the original Colonial Spa and everything right there.
Exactly.
Yep.
So here's our first character area, and it's MOD, meaning it's the MBTA mandatory area, industrial loft area. And this is Foundry Street. And Foundry Street could be residential or mixed use, so you do have an option. A lot of the buildings on Foundry Street that have Grayson Lofts that's been done, 62 Foundry Street, which is a nice condo complex. The new complex that is being built by DiBiase and Missouri, it's under construction right now, that is actually going to have a commercial component on the first floor, I think a restaurant, I believe, but then buildings above, kind of like the Tono's building.
Yes.
So that building, those buildings have certain character in that area. And they're kind of shown as the yellow-ish area here. And you'll notice that this area also includes Wakefield Crossing, which are condos that are already built.
Yeah.
It includes some other condos that have been approved in the area. It includes the apartment building on the corner of Tuttle and Chestnut Street.
Sure.
So all of these are areas that some are developed, some aren't. But the building height here can be 5 stories or 57 max. I will tell you that the building at Grayson Lofts is 6 stories.
Yeah.
So actually, if you wanted to build a building on the Grayson Lofts site, if you wanted to knock that down and build a new building, it can only be 5 stories.
Okay.
According to this. Setbacks, keeping with the area, front and side of 10 feet, rear of 15 feet, additional 10% if abutting residential. Lot coverage, 60% max. Footprint, 15,000 square foot max. Parking requirements, 1.5 spaces per unit. This is exactly what is in the underlying zoning right now. We wanted to keep with that. And if you looked at Foundry area, that Foundry industrial loft area, 5 stories, a little cheat at the top, 775 units could potentially be built according to the state formula in that yellow area. But I think we have to note that there's already 458 units there today. So if you were to knock all those down and rebuild, I guess you could rebuild a little bit more, but chances are that's not going to happen.
Right.
So that's character area number 1. And I always thought personally that we would continue down Foundry Street as we march forward anyway.
That seemed logical because of its location to the railroad
So
station.
you may ask me, Steve, why didn't we go further down Foundry Street towards Broadway? Because you'll see where that yellow line ends.
Yep.
That is because there is an underground culvert or an underground some river or something that goes under there, and those soil conditions or what have you does not allow it to be part of the state area.
Is
so
that
that's
part
why
of the culvert, the stream that was causing a problem with the old middle school?
I don't think it is part of that, but it may drain to the same area.
Okay.
Because the other one came the other
right.
way. You notice that we left the other areas, you go down Lake Street in that area, it's more single and 2 family homes.
Yep.
Bartley Street, we didn't go into those areas
because
we didn't want to change that character. So this district kind of laid on top of stuff that was really already built. So the industrial loft district. And this kind of shows you those areas again, and as the darker the color goes, that shows you the density that's already there, because there are already people living in those, already apartments in those areas.
Right.
All buildings that we're very familiar with, that whole area. And here's an example of what they would look like. This is what they do look like. So you could see this is 62 Foundry Street on the left of your screen.
Yeah.
Really a nice condo building. Those are all condos. I know that they're very nice because my son and his fiance lived there for a year. And really lovely condos, very inviting. Us empty nesters might think of them someday. And then we have Grayson Lofts, which is in the same area, but that's rentals. Those are all rentals.
Yeah, that's the old Harvard Mills building, and then for those of us of a certain age, that was Transitron for a while as well. Exactly.
So that's your industrial loft area. So our potential high-rise residential, bird's eye view here of Colonial Point. Okay, completely residential area as Colonial Point is. Building height, 120 feet or 10 stories. I'll tell you, Colonial Point, I believe, is 12 stories right now. Setbacks, same for the area. Lot coverage, 30% max. Blueprint, Building footprint, 20,000 square foot max. Parking requirements, again, 1.5 spaces per unit. Consistent really through most of the community.
Okay.
We wanted to keep that the same. So here, I guess that there are already 176 units at Colonial Point. I guess that if someone wanted to add an addition or do something, knock that down, I guess there
Right.
could be, some more units built, but we don't know what's going to happen, but the capacity is there as far as the state is concerned.
Sure.
And this is 25% outside of the district, which is allowed under the law.
Mm-hmm.
And here again is where it is, kind of at Audubon Road curves.
Yep.
We all know, we're all pretty familiar with down there. Us old timers know that, Pleasure Island used to be down there.
Yes, yes.
The old
we,
days.
We remember that really well.
A lot of wetlands in the area.
Yep.
So that is an issue. And here's what Colonial Point looks like today. So that's what you already have there.
Mm-hmm.
North Ave mixed use. We really felt that, or the committee really felt that we wanted to make sure that we did not lose our commercial tax base, because that is a big issue for the community. And, doing that, although might put us in compliance if we lost it completely, it could, who knows what it would do down the road
Right.
to our viability. So in that North Ave corridor, and it really goes from the Galvin, you can see at the bottom, this is in the blue, it kind of encompasses Tuttle Street,
Yep.
the, the businesses on the west side of North Ave on Tuttle Street, all the way to Church Street. Most of those are businesses right now.
Mm-hmm.
So we decided in this area that the mixed use had to be in compliance. First floor commercial, and second and third floor residential.
Mhm.
Okay, kind of a time old and true type of development throughout history, right? When you go back to the days of people living above,
Exactly.
when above the store, above the grocery store, the downtown.
Well, even in the downtown areas, there was housing above
Colonial
a
Spa,
number.
for instance.
Colonial Spa had 2 floors of apartments.
Exactly.
Sure.
So that's kind of going back to yesteryear.
Sure.
In keeping with the character of this area,
Mm-hmm.
setbacks in the front and side, 0. And you think about that. These buildings are all on the sidewalk.
Mm-hmm.
We go to them every day,
Mm-hmm.
keeping with that character. You can cover more of the lot, keeping with the character of the area. And first floor needs to be commercial. And there's no parking requirements, as there is now.
Mm-hmm.
No, you don't have parking requirements for most businesses on the first floor. Residential, again, 1.5 spaces per unit. So again, really keeping with the character
Mm-hmm.
of the area, and included in this area is the Tono's building, and that's already built,
Right.
obviously.
Right.
So because the first floor doesn't count, because it's commercial,
Right.
it would create 156 units, potentially,
Mm-hmm.
and there are already 83 existing.
Right.
So we're basically there with that. Again, keeping with that character. And again, here is showing you some of the density. There's very few areas right now that have density, so some could be added above, but we want that first floor commercial in that area.
Sure.
And this kind of, although this is again, looking down Main Street, it does kind of give you an idea of what that would look like. And for those of you that are nostalgic, here's a look at that a long time ago. Again, with awnings and people living on top.
And streetcars.
And streetcars. Albion Street. So Albion Street, actually, we had looked at Albion Street, or the committee did the first time, and actually some of the people at the meetings came forward and said, really, Albion Street could use some vibrancy. So I think we agree. We want that corridor between Main and the train station.
Yep.
And there are a lot of businesses right now, a lot of kind of destination businesses where people go, to Picasso or the hobby shop or some other places in there.
Sure.
So on the first floor, you can have residential or mixed use, because there is some residential mixed in there.
Not as much as there used to be, it seems.
Yeah, but there is.
Yeah,
But there is a
yeah,
character there.
yeah.
Setbacks, again, front and side are 0.
Yep.
And again, parking for residential units is required, but not commercial. And a lot of those commercial businesses, as we know, do not have their own parking.
Right.
They're right on the street.
Right.
And maybe they already have residential units up front. And what's interesting here is that, and we included the Foster Street area, where that apartment building on Foster and Richardson. So under 30A, the state thinks that this could develop 50 units. There's already 70 units in the area when you count in
48.
Yeah, 48. When
Yeah.
you count in 48, yes, 40A, Section 3A. So there's 70 existing units at that. So again, keeping with the character, trying to fit this in to where we already are.
Yeah.
And again, looking at where there are some areas that could have some density. Others are already have already people occupying them, but there are some areas that maybe there would be some people that might be occupying. So it's an interesting area. Interesting again. Greenwood, again, a neighborhood commercial, and we think of Greenwood going really on Main Street on either side. A lot of those buildings are, again, some are residential, but there are some that are mixed use, and some that are commercial in the area. So this area, again, could bring in 323 units. There are already 89 units existing, so it is an interesting area to talk about.
And there are some buildings in Greenwood Center that could use
A little bit of the TLC. And
a little bit of love, yeah.
And again, the public forums that we had, many in the community came and said, "Hey, Greenwood could use some vibrancy."
Yeah.
So we listened to the area to talk about it. So again, this is another area that we're looking at. And again, you can see where there is some density right now in that area, and where there is some commercial area characters that maybe the density isn't so good. So this could bring 323 units, and there are already 89 in there. Who knows what could happen, but it's all about capacity, what could be done.
And that's a very busy station.
Very busy station.
A lot of people in the neighborhood walk to the train each day and walk home again, and
To kind of visualize what could be in that area, this is a good example. This is a new building being under construction right now near Nacella Field on Water Street, and there is commercial on the first floor. It's not a signage company. It's actually going to be, there'll be signage there for a new wine and cheese shop that's going in there.
That's just showing where the signs will be.
Is. And then there'll be units on top of it.
Yeah.
Kind of looks a little bit, maybe it's a stretch, like the item building that's still there, but it kind of gives that character of what that area may look like as we go forward.
Sure.
So we add all this up, we get to our 1696 total at the bottom. We have 1722, very close, but we want to make sure that, hey, if the state juggles our numbers a little bit, although they shouldn't, that we still are in compliance. And in that, there are 876 existing units already built, and this does not include the fact that the building on Foundry Street being built by DiBiase and Missouri together has 65 units in it, but they just haven't been, they haven't really been permitted yet as far as occupancy permits. Right. So I think the committee did a really good job in trying to listen to the people and trying to kind of thread a needle. So we talked about this a little bit earlier. What happens if there's non-compliance mean? It means that we risk any current and future grants. So any grants that we have received now, we have a grant received for doing sidewalks on Hopkins Street. Okay, haven't spent the money yet, but we will be putting those in. Is that grant at risk? Yes, because it's at a program that the state has designated that is at risk. And we have a grant to do our housing production plan for $80,000 right now. That would be at risk. Past 3 years, Wakefield received, and these are old numbers. These are going to change because the state changed the grant areas that are subject to this, and I'll show you that in a second. But over the past 3 years, we've gotten $3.7 million worth of grants, and we will enumerate them shortly.
Sure.
Attorney General may sue the town. There's a cost of legal action, and we could end up being forced to comply. So let's pull all this out. We're suing. The state's suing Milton, and that has, like we said, that's been to the SJC, and it hasn't really. We don't have an answer yet, and I don't think we will by town meeting. So when the state started out, they said there's a few grant programs that you will not be able to be eligible for should you not comply.
Yeah.
And they were housing choice community grants. They were mass work infrastructure grants. They were municipal vulnerability grants. They were some community planning grants, downtown initiative, really
Mhm.
kind of linked directly to housing. Okay, the number has grown. The number has grown over the last couple of years, including
When you say the number of items that have
the number of
been
grant
added to the
programs that
list.
the state is adding to the list. Yes.
Yeah.
And interestingly enough, and I was surprised to see this, frankly, is this last bullet here, DESE program, the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education.
Yeah.
So grant programs that for education and student health, FRESH, okay?
Mhm.
Early literacy programs, emotional learning, behavior, and mental health and wellness. PRISM grant, which is for reading success,
Mhm.
okay? Those have just been added. And on the DE website is that line. Grant awards are contingent upon the grantee being able to certify that it will comply with the Massachusetts general laws, including General Law, Chapter 40A, Section 3A, the MBTA Communities Act. So right now, if the superintendent were applying for a grant, if I were applying for a grant, if anybody were applying for a grant that had that language in it, we could not sign that because I cannot certify that. I don't know what's going to happen at town meeting. After town meeting occurs, I could, and it passes, I could say yes, and the referendum is gone, and the AG has signed off on it. I can say yes. But right now, we cannot comply. So it's an interesting conundrum.
It
Oh,
is.
we can. I guess we can't certify that. We can apply, but will not be considered.
What happens, and it's a long shot, but what happens if ultimately the lawsuits by Milton, Rockport, and others are successful?
To a degree.
What does that do?
Well, we don't know what the decision is going to come down with, right?
Yeah.
I think there will be portions of the law that may go back to the state, because the state legislature passed state law. That's
Mhm.
not going to change.
Mm-hmm.
The question is are there portions of the regulations that were promulgated by the executive offices of housing and family living, or whatever it is, DHCD it used to be,
Right.
and will those be will there be some changes there, and or will it be sent back to the legislature for further consideration?
Yep.
But we don't know. I think our job is to be in compliance with the law. That's how we look at it. These are some of the ones that we received, and we'll have a lot more to talk about. MassWorks 2022, that whole North Ave Main improvements, including the water service
Yep.
there, $2 million.
Yep.
Housing Choice Grant, a small one but an important one. Housing Works Grant on Hopkins Street, $571,000. The grant on North Ave, on Albion Street, where it put those beautiful bump outs in and the
Mhm,
trees and
mhm,
everything.
mhm.
That one was under this, would be sacrificed as well. So I think the state has put a lot of teeth into this, and frankly, we've taken a lot of advantage of those over the years.
Yeah.
Of getting them. This would be questions at town meeting. This will be a lot of information on this as we go forward. I think our key points were: A, we felt we should be in compliance with the law.
Yeah.
B, we listened to the community and listened to what they wanted. And again, keeping the area as minimal compliance as possible.
Yep.
Taking advantage of the areas that we could in the law,
Sure.
and keeping the characters of the different neighborhoods. That was key, and we've had a lot of feedback, a lot of people at our public forums. Not everybody is for this, I get that, but we tried to thread the needle, and I think that the committee did a really good job in working with what we had, and we'll present this package not only to the planning board, for them to make a recommendation on it, but also to the people at town meeting. And that'll take a few hours.
Yes, bring coffee.
Yes.
Well, hopefully, that's been helpful, and hopefully people will take a look at this and think hard about it before town meeting. But I encourage everyone who can to attend. We will, if it's necessary, have overflow capacity. Sometimes on a Saturday, that's not usually the case.
It
But
can go,
we'll
it can
see.
go either way.
It could go either way. But, this is a chance for your voice to be heard, so please seriously consider coming to town meeting on Saturday, November 16th at 8 a.m. at the Galvin Middle School in the auditorium, and let your voice be heard.
Yeah. There is a great Norman Rockwell painting of, I think it's called Town Meeting, where, one man gets up
Yep,
and he is clearly talking against the rest, at odds with the rest of the
Yep.
rest of the crowd.
Yep.
But that's what town meeting is about.
Yep.
And what's been great in Wakefield is people are 99% of the time respectful. Listen, you don't have to vote that way,
right.
but you do have to respect the person's right to state their opinion.
Yep.
And so I do encourage people to go and to have yourself be heard, ask questions. In my experience, the people that have come up to me over the years that have complained about a vote made at town meeting are people that weren't there.
Mm-hmm.
And,
Mm-hmm.
there's less sympathy for them because of that. So
Yep.
please come and be heard.
If you want your vote to count, please come. And on that note, Steve, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us. We'll see you next time.